One hot summer day, I was sitting at my desk playing video games with my friends. I had the air conditioning on because it was way too hot and it was hard to focus. Looking through my window, I see a spider, and it was huge. I smacked the glass and tried to get it to move, and it jumped at me, hitting the glass and falling down. Figuring I got rid of it, I sat back down and continued to play games. Later that night, I woke up to a searing pain in the right side of my face. I reached for my phone to look around and see a spider sitting on my pillow staring right at me. I screamed and smacked the spider off my pillow. It fell to the ground where I crushed it. I got up out of bed and walked to the bathroom to check my face. It was pretty swollen, so I went downstairs to the refrigerator to grab an ice pack to try to ease it. I went back upstairs and fell asleep. That night I had the strangest dreams. Dreams of spiders crawling all over my skin and out of my bed. I woke up the next day with rashes and the room started to swirl. The picture in the room of my family was blurred out and I could just make out shadows. My door had spiders crawling through the bottom, along with my ceiling being covered in webs. I'd take a look at my fingers, and at the tips, spiders were crawling from underneath my fingernails. I looked in the mirror to only see a reflection of a shadow. Scratching, gnashing, and clawing noises were the only thing I could hear. They were so loud that I started to smack my head to ease the sounds. And I started to hear a banging on my door. A woman could be heard asking me if I was okay. It was my mother. My mother's voice transformed into a screeching sound as my door opened. As it opened, a giant pile of spiders waved in like waves of the sea. I fell to the ground shivering as my body became achy, to then become numb. My mother stood over me and her eyes glowed. Her face was darkened. I felt her pick me up and carry me to the car. The world was painted in darkness and the sun was a blood red. I'm shaking and quivering at the moment that I was in. I vomit and start to panic. I felt like my mother was talking, but all that was coming out was violent waves of distortion. The sun shines through the windows as the car comes to a stop. My heart is racing and fear is still my master at this point. My mother picks me up, but her head was all covered in fuzz, and she had 8 eyes glaring into my soul. I get put onto a bed of some sort, but the spiders keep crawling towards me. The feeling of their legs burn my skin as they crawl closer and closer to my face. At this point, I'm surrounded by beings that looked like nothing but mere shadows. I feel myself being moved faster and faster as my eyes start to roll. The spiders are getting closer to my mouth as my eyes stop rolling and I look to the ceiling. They are laying upside down as a huge brown spider laughing at me in a nefarious tone. Its eyes inlaid with golden skulls as it slowly drops down onto me. Through my eyes, my nose, and my ears, legions of 8-legged creatures crawl their way through. As I feel death calling to me and the spider welcomes me to her nest, I blacked out. My eyes slowly open. I'm covered in sweat and pain. I look over to see doctors and nurses sitting around me. My mother is there as well. She was terrified, and I was terrified. The doctor had said that I was bitten by a brown recluse spider and had baby spiders crawling in my ear canal. I had suffered from hallucinations from the bite, and the spider must have crawled its way in through the air conditioner in my window. They were just glad that I got there when I did. Any more time wasted, and I wouldn't be there to tell the story. I worked the graveyard shift for a good portion of my adult life. People joked around about it, but being a gravedigger was something I found peaceful and relaxing. I've had some interesting stories of working on that job. Between animals screaming through the woods, to heavily intoxicated people screaming into the night over the loss of a loved one. With those moments, nothing will top that one year. It was about 2 years into my grave digging career, and I was getting the hang of quiet evenings by myself. I was never scared of the dark, and working at night seemed to be a great fit. I'm fairly introverted, so working alone most of the time was a gift. One night I was working and doing my usual duties when I heard something off in the bushes near the woods. Walking over, I shined my flashlight to take a look around and saw nothing. I shrugged it off and started to make my way back to work, but noticed that something was off. Looking over to the east side of the cemetery, I saw dirt piled up. I ran over to it and shined the flashlight to see the gravesite dug up. The casket was empty, and the remains of the person were nowhere to be found. I didn't notice it at first, since I was working on the west side of the cemetery that night. I went to the building, grabbed the phone, and called the manager of the cemetery to let him know that the remains were missing from the site. He said he'd be down and was calling the police. So I hung up the phone and noticed a person standing near the site looking suspicious. He was staring into the abyss. Luckily, the manager lived a mile up the road and was pulling into the parking lot. The man snapped out of his trance, and I asked him what he was doing there. He said, "I'm sick, and I'm trying to get caught." I was confused and told him to stay where he was. He knelt down and put his hands on the ground. He started to cry and laugh out loud with his eyes opened, and he looked at me. The sight of his face gave me chills, and it legitimately scared me. The manager ran up to the loud commotion and asked the man what he was doing there. The man just continued to cry and laugh. The police showed up to the scene and arrested the man. They searched the perimeter and found the remains in a garbage bag near a tree. The man was put into the police cruiser and taken away. When questioned at the police station about what he was doing, he said, "Check my house. You'll find what you're looking for." The police showed up to the man's house where they found a sight of horrors. The man had treated several bodies with taxidermy and had them dressed, standing up in his living room. A bust of a man was sewn onto a plaque that was hanging up in his bedroom, as if it were a trophy. The police checked the fridge, and they found a few mason jars full of remains with labels on them, along with spoiled food and cockroaches fluttering throughout the kitchen. Other stuff was recovered, but it's a little too gross to talk about. The police questioned the man further and asked him why he did it. The man said that he had been digging up bodies for a few years now, at different cemeteries. He found the dead to be beautiful, and they kept him company while he lived by himself. He also said that he knew he had a problem and couldn't take it any longer. I felt bad for the man in a way. Yeah, it's disturbing to know what he did, but the loneliness and the mental illness he suffered with makes me really sad. Grave digging has never been the same ever since. I think about that man every night when I work. Hopefully, he got the help that he needed. Thank you for taking time out of your day to check this video out. If you enjoyed the content, consider subscribing to know when new videos release in the near future. Hope you're all well and staying safe. Thanks again, and I'll see you soon.